Hey, welcome back to Life You Imagined. My name is Nico, and today we're going to be talking about the book Happy. So, before we get into any specifics, I just want to start out by saying I think this book is very, very interesting. It made a very big impact on me. I enjoyed a lot of the information. However, I don't think this is the kind of book I can recommend to most people. It's a very narrow audience that would appreciate this book because we're so special, and I don't mean it that way. And I'll tell you why. I'll first get into some of the specificity about why I probably can't recommend this to most people. Maybe even you. I'd like to be able to say you should be able to read this, but maybe not. And then I'll tell you what the book is about. How's that? Sound great? Shake on it, invisible person. Okay. I don't know why that was hard. I was like, shaking hands. You're shaking hands. Dun, 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 dun. So one of the main reasons why this is going to be hard to recommend to most people is because of the author. Derren Brown. He's actually one of my heroes, I guess, if I put it that way. I was trying to figure out what would I call him. Idol? Not exactly. I don't really try to idolize people, but I look up to him. I like the guy a lot. He is a magician and mentalist, and very, very big in the UK. Household name in the UK, in fact. If you haven't heard of Derren Brown, please do yourself a favor. Go on YouTube, look up Derren Brown. There's your spelling. It's a little different. He's got the E in there. It's not an A. And look up some of the clips of his shows and his performances. And it's if you're into magic, if you're into mentalism, if you're into anything like that, I think you're going to really enjoy it if you haven't seen him yet. Because if you've already seen him, then you know how fucking badass he is. If you don't have any interest in Derren Brown, if you don't know who he is, it's kind of hard to recommend this book because it's very him. He's got his personality comes through very strongly in there, which is great. Again, if you like Derren Brown, but doesn't matter. It's like, oh, it's just some random guy. Not to say that the book doesn't have good information that would still work if you don't know who he is, but it definitely makes a big difference. And I'll say the other reason ahead of time, which I usually save these till the end, but I'll say ahead of time the other reason why you might not enjoy this one is it's very thesaurus laden. So lots of big words that don't really belong. He's got a very big vocabulary, so good for him, but it doesn't always add to the readability. Even as a fan of his, I'll stumble across words I'm like, what? What the hell are you talking about? What the hell old word is this? Again, good on him, but it doesn't necessarily help readability. So those are the two biggest things I think against that, is that it does help to already be a fan of Derren Brown's, and you have to be able to be willing to go through some of his very ornate word choices occasionally. So besides that, let's get into why I think this book is actually really cool. Derren Brown is a skeptic. He's an atheist. So I thought it was very cool when he wrote a book about self-help. I thought initially he was going to be just sort of like a big sarcastic takedown of the self-help movement. That's not really what it is. He does spend the first few chapters talking about sort of the state of things in terms of self-help and some of the damaging ideas that we get right now about thinking more positively, and how a lot of times the advice in these very popular self-help books, often the ones that are more spiritually oriented and less proven by science, they can actually backfire on us. They can do more damage. So he lays out this case first, and then he gets into sort of the solution, what he thinks are some of the solutions. And this book, rather than, as I said, being this big sarcastic takedown of, haha, self-help, it's so dumb, it's actually more of a philosophy-based book. There are definitely some psychological aspects and some of the studies that he includes in here and references, but it's much more geared toward philosophy, because although a lot of us might think, and I don't know if you might not be one of them, but I know a lot of people think that philosophy is just this complete waste of time. It's just pointless navel-gazing. What good does it do? Hey, what if clouds were made of cheese? That'd be weird, huh? Yeah, let's think about that. It's like a lot of people think of it as being that completely useless. Whereas initially, philosophy actually started out because people wanted to figure out how to live a good life. That was the origin of it, which is like, oh, well, that sounds useful. That sounds practical. Let's talk about that. So he gets into that whole thing here, and he actually has a really, really fascinating chapter, very long chapter, fascinating about the history of how we view happiness, like from a philosophical standpoint. So he starts with the kind of ancient Greeks and Romans, and then he moves into, century by century and sort of big major changes in how we thought about the concept of happiness or didn't. Like we go through kind of a lull in the Dark Ages where that wasn't really much of a thing, and kind of how Christianity and other religions impacted some of that stuff at that time. And then we come back to the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, how happiness became a popular thing again, back to the forefront of the everyman. It wasn't just for the person in luxury in in a castle to imagine what it's like to be happy or think about how to be happy. Or, average people could do that. He gets into like stuff about Nietzsche, and I think there's stuff about Freud, about how these ideas from these people impacted our understanding of what being happy is. So again, very fascinating, and I think the book is almost kind of worth it just for that, even though he got it from another book. So maybe just that book is better. But anyway, if we go back to the ancient Greek philosophy, we find a lot of the answers that make life a little easier to live, right? Way back then. It's, you go back a couple thousand years, and you'd think modern advice would be a lot better, but it maybe isn't unnecessarily. I mean, depends where you look. In particular, he focuses on Stoicism. And I didn't really know much about Stoicism. I'd heard of it. I didn't study it much before I read this. And I credit Derren for really getting me to be excited and interested in going down the Stoicism rabbit hole. Since I've read this, I've been so much more interested in this idea, and I've been applying it to almost everything. And you've probably heard the basic idea of what Stoicism is about without really knowing it, as I did. I didn't know it either. And it comes up in the form of the Christian Serenity prayer. And of course, they took that idea from Stoicism. They didn't invent that necessarily. But so their version of that, of course, is much more God-laden. But it's the idea that, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Even when I was younger, I always thought that was a really smart, very useful phrase. It's called a prayer, I guess. Whatever it is, I thought that idea was really good. But I never explored it much beyond that, and I didn't really think about how it really impacts everything. So this idea is one of the core tenets of Stoicism, that people mostly suffer because they're so focused on the things they can't change in life. We're focused on things we have no control over, which then creates most of our suffering. So the idea, pretty straightforwardly, is to focus on the things we do have control over and learn to be shruggably okay with all the things we have no power over. It's not about pretending that when bad things happen that they're good, because there's a lot of corruption, I think, of being more positive. When people tell you to think positively, a lot of books talk about this, unfortunately, where they take it to the extreme and they pretend like just everything's positive. No, you just don't understand. It's just everything happened for a reason and all this bullshit. And like, no, you still acknowledge that you didn't necessarily like the thing that happened, but it's about not fighting with it. It's accepting it as it is, that it's just a thing that happened and being okay, which is a little harder than it sounds, but it's extremely useful. So then we have to go back to the idea of the things that are in your control. Like, okay, learn to be okay with the things that are out of my control, learn to focus on the things that are in my control. What does that mean? What's actually in my control? And this is the thing for me, in addition to being okay, trying to be okay with the things that just happen, that life throws at you, that is so impactful and so useful. And he talks about the same reason here, is that we basically, so says the Stoics, have control over two things only. And that is our conscious thoughts, because sometimes we have thoughts that just pop into our head that we didn't choose to think, but the thoughts we choose to think and the actions we choose to take. That is it. Everything else, which is most things, 99.9999999% of things, We have zero control over, which is hard. It's hard to feel that and hard to realize that at the beginning, because we're so used to wanting to assert our opinions and our efforts and try to control people and their thoughts and their desires and make people think something, make people feel something, make people do something, make a situation go a certain way. And a lot of times this is just complete wasted effort and just going to end up making you feel angry and disappointed and hurt and depressed and make you feel like a failure and make you feel like you want to give up and hopeless and all these other things, because it was a losing game from the start. So learning to be okay with that is huge. It's huge. It has been huge for me. I've been trying to help some of my friends and some people that I work with to come and see that idea, that model for your perception of the world. And it's been game changing for me. It really has. Learning to just focus on those two things. So this book spends a lot of time going through all the different ways that Stoicism can be sort of applied to different areas, and how this concept, and there's some more details to how this works beyond just the things you can control, things you can't control. There's more to it. There's more detail that he brings, and he creates this little like XY graph thing again, kind of like they had in Flow. Actually, he references that study too, about how it's like our own aspirations and our goals and our will kind of butts up against what circumstances are, the challenges of life and all that. It's like how this back and forth thing works, which is pretty interesting. And he brings that into multiple areas, multiple topics, and keeps developing it. And it's pretty fucking interesting. So as I said, this is, for me, a really important book, but I also have trouble recommending it to most people. Again, it is a little wordy, flowery, I would say, and it doesn't make as much of an impact, or it's not as fun to read if you don't already know Derren Brown and know his humor style. He's very witty and all that, but it helps when you actually are already a fan of his. So I don't know if I can say, hey, yeah, check this one out. Even though it's, as I said, it's been really impactful for me, the basic ideas in here. And coming back to Stoicism. But there are, of course, the original Stoics, and they have plenty of books like Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. So they have books, and I definitely am going to be checking a lot of that out. There's also a couple other books on Stoicism. I think Ryan Holiday has a few. I haven't gotten to those yet, but I intend on getting to those. I also have that I've been reading The Daily Stoic, which actually Ryan Holiday is a co-writer on that one. And so I've just been reading like one of those a day, like one little page, which is pretty cool. I like that. Nice little positive influence in the morning. Get me back to something that's very pragmatic and very practical, which I like. Not a bunch of airy-fairy spiritual crap. Youch. It's like I have an opinion on that topic. If you think this sounds interesting, that this might be up your alley, go check out my written review. The link is in the description below on the website. And you'll get a little more detailed information and how I break it down and and how I rate it and all that. And that might be more of the deciding factor if you think that's something that's worth your time, or if it sounds like that would be the type of book you'd be interested in reading. I do have Amazon links from there as well, and you can check out and get the book if you want to. But I'm going to keep looking again for more books that I believe get this concept across in a easier to digest way, or a more layman friendly way, or maybe one that has more actionability. This one doesn't necessarily have a lot of actionability. There's no exercises, there's no chapter reviews, there's no, follow these steps now. It's just talking about happiness and stoicism and self-help and all these things. But again, very fascinating. So I'll keep looking. So make your own decision. Check out the link, check out my written review, see what you think. I hope I can share this with you, because as I said, this basic concept, and when we get more detailed about it, which I'd like to discuss more with you in the future about this idea, just because I feel like it applies everywhere, and it's been so much more helpful for me. I live an easier life so far, and I'm still working to improve that, but because of these ideas. Not necessarily his, but Stoicism. So very, very fucking cool. Very, very fucking cool, bro. Fuck Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. I honestly do. This is Life You Imagined. My name is Nico, and I will see you next time. Bye. Sorry, stuff. You have a little thing on your face, honey. Is it like D-A-R-R-E-N? That's probably they do dare and instead of a dare. It's the same. Sounds the same. Doesn't matter how whatever mouth shape I use. Good for him. He's got a very big what?
Hey, you want to be a better person? You want to live a better life? Sweet! Make sure you hit subscribe on Life You Imagined YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit that fucking notification bell so you're always up to date with all the newest offerings from Life You Imagined. Don't forget to go ahead and hit like on the video and share with all your friends. Leave a comment with all your fucking useless information, because I'm never going to read it. Oh, and make sure you go over to lifeyouimagine.com and check out everything I have over there. Look at me, buy my stuff, do everything I want you to do. Sales, marketing, promo, buy my stuff, buy it. Look at me, pay attention to me and everything I do. I'm insecure.